So Brian, we've had a bit of a problem. So our ratings, not so great. Our ratings have been not where we want them to be. Our reviews are
had a bit of a problem.
Our subscribers are up to only 85, which is a long way away from a platinum YouTube button. We aren't doing great. So, but I had a plan. I was looking into this last week. I was doing our metrics, and I came up with a plan. I found that you could get your book and your show sponsor. You could sponsor another BookTuber to do an ad for like your show or for your book. So I found a guy. Seems like right up our alley. I found a guy, and I paid a lot of money through his Patreon to be able to get him to promote 2-month review and the dream part to his 100,000 plus subscriber base, because his videos have hundreds of thousands of views. Ours have like 50. So I figured this is serious. Yeah, this is the way to do it. These booktubers, man. There's one that was 400,000. I couldn't afford her. She was too big. She's like Polish Banana Books or something. She has like 406,000 subscribers. Too expensive for my taste.
Polish Banana Books?
Polish Banana Books, which I don't know what's going on there. Whole land, like not even Polish. Whole land Banana Books.
Oh, sorry.
So even worse. But so I got this guy. His name's Caden, and he sent me the video from his new show that's just the part in which he talks about our book. So we are going to debut this live, and hopefully when this goes out, he said he's not completely finished. He needs to add some graphics, but this is the raw footage for us. And when this goes out in the world, we are going to get a serious spike of attention. So I want to show all of our viewers here this special preview where you get to see Caden Little talk about our book. So here we go. Hello and welcome. This is Caden Little, Ravenclaw, book hunter extraordinaire, host of Serious Series, the most new adult fiction booktube channel in the universe. And, if I'm being completely honest, the most intelligent of all the booktubes. Today we'll be analyzing in graduate level detail, as you've come to expect, the symbolism woven throughout soon to the ballad of songbirds and snakes, which I feel obliged to say is Collins' nadir as a writer. Oh, took into consideration none of the exquisitely detailed notes I gave her about Mockingjay. Otherwise, this travesty of a prequel wouldn't be riddled with more plot holes than James Astor's reputation. We're also having Layton's takedown in the John Green is overrated segment. Thank you, Books and Donuts 7, for your minor contribution to my program, along with some user mail and the announcement of the winner of the Take a Selfie with Caden contest. But most of you are absolutely, stunningly incapable of writing jacket copy for my novel, Dark Bloom Transparency. Nice try, but if I could, you would all be losers. But I was forced by the Patreon and my producers to choose a winner, so one of you will get to take a selfie with Caden Little, book hunter extraordinaire. Find out who later on in the program. But first, I'm going to do something unprecedented in the history of Serious Series. I'm going to do a book unwrapping that is sponsored by something called 2 Month. I was too busy last night inserting interesting adverbs into dark program, but since they joined my Patreon at the Shadowhunter level, I guess I have to highlight the book. Oh, well, this doesn't look very interesting at all. The Dreamed Part by Richard Franzen from Open Press. Okay, first mistake. This cover is terrible. Is it sci-fi? Is it fantasy? Teen romance? Who knows? Are there even going to be dragons? This monstrosity earns a Serious Series score of -3. 3 actual Montmans down. Now, let's see what this is about. A god particle that allows the protagonist to start a white plague? Let me stop you right there, Franzen. This is 2020, and your casual racism is no longer allowed. I'm going to have to hunt your book. Also, What is this Vladimir Putin doing in here? If I wanted to read about Russian influence, I'd watch the fake news. Sorry, Franzen, but you've been haunted. Producers, now on, we only read ads for the good stuff. Cassandra Clare level, Veronica Roth, Rainbow Roll, if we must. Not this 2-bit imitator who can't even put a goddamn dragon on their cover. Hashtag cancel 2 open months. Done with this shit.
Wow, you paid for that?
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I think I made a grave mistake in not researching this better.
Where's that guy from? He's,
Arkansas?
Okay.
Oklahoma.
He had the sound of other Southern hospitality, but just none of it. It's very aggressive.
He's a hunter. I thought book hunter was a good thing. Something would be like positive, like you hunt it and you put it on your wall or something. I don't know. These fucking booktubers are confusing to me, man. So I think I'm gonna have to crack open a peak IPA to deal with that because I don't think that's gonna work for us. But this is also, I chose this peak IPA to drink because this section of the book for this week's 2-month review that we're doing, the Dream Part by Rodrigo Frazan and Will Vanderheiden. This section is peak fucking Frazan.
Gosh, I was laughing all through this section. It's so funny.
This is so
funny.
This is what you come for. 100%. So, I forget what the exact page count. Where do we go from? It's like 424. Yeah, 424 up through 487.
But before we dive into that, I'm assuming you had to watch some. I've never really watched a BookTube channel. I assume you watched a couple of those.
Yeah. So one of my
what is the world of booktubing, by the way?
Usually it begins. It's usually a young woman, and it usually begins like this. Hey.
Okay.
Opening. One of my students wrote a paper about these booktubers for a final report. So that's what got me like from this rabbit hole. And when I found him, I was like, oh, yeah, let's put this shit up. I watched like 30 seconds, seemed good.
Yeah.
You know, who knows? But yeah, they're always about YA books. And like,
okay.
They have hundreds of thousands of followers, hundreds of thousands. And it's wild. It's like celebrities talking about like the most banal aspects of books, of YA books. But like there is, in terms of like booktubers for real, Derek Main, who's on here for the first episode, his Read the World channel on YouTube. Now that's legit. Like that's not like these people at all. Like if you haven't seen it, his 30-minute review of Parek's Life of Users manual is like really incredibly. I don't know how you produce videos, but it seems like an incredible feat to me. And it's like a real read of Parek, which is awesome. Like that's really cool. But that is not what most of these are. Those ones are like us, where it's not popular. The ones that are like super like mega level popular and influencers, they're all talking about garbage.
Well, I mean, it's like, in a way, it's kind of like those YouTube videos where they do a review of like an In-N-Out burger or a Popeye's chicken sandwich, or like you're doing food reviews of fast food. Like, is that necessary? Do we need that? Right? Like, and in some ways, like the ones that you sent me are just like people were like, they walk into Barnes and Nobles, look at the book covers of like, oh, for this Dragon Shadow series, like, all right, cool. It has like one of those stickers, 30% off Barnes and Noble stickers. I'm gonna get 2 of these. Or, you know, like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like maybe they're doing some good and getting people to go out and buy books, but they're always just the big giant books that have you know, like an end shelving at Barnes and Nobles or at Target or something, and like of course they don't need your help.
Yeah. There's no way that you're an influencer if what you're influencing is what's already been bought and sold by like a generation. Like that's kind of like going with the tidal wave is not really influencing the water. If you know what I mean?
Sure.
This is my grand metaphor for today. But yeah, they're rough. They're rough to watch. And not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
For the most part. So what did you think of this section though? This is you're dying too.
I like all the sections, obviously, but this one in particular, I just couldn't help it. I just kept laughing. I almost felt like in a way, it's like the author like having this for the longest time, like I've had this thing, I've just got to get it off my shoulders. Is there a way I can get this in a book? Like, yes.
Yeah.
And it's good. And I love like the paper thin excuse to do it. Like, so he read one of the to the audience, he read something from his BG notebook, and it went like this. Boom.
It's so
And if that wasn't enough, he said one more thing, and it was this. Like, it was like
yeah, so to try and like, I don't know, to plot walk this through as a whole, and then we can just get into all the fun parts. There are a few things that we learned that we don't know. What happened with Penelope's son again, that the writer had a career, was sort of lauded, was at the fringes of popularity, but never bought into the sort of what he ends up calling HE-IKEA and she-IKEA, their vision of writing, where it's like very palatable and they milk every like minor tragedy for like creative fact, and is incredibly popular and sells really well. And it frustrates him because he helped blur both of them at the beginning, but now they're like way more successful than he is. And they just use like names as tokens, like, oh, I'm influenced by Shakespeare, and like things like that are like ridiculous. And so then the other thing that's like there's one other main point. What was it? I marked it down. I forget. So we get Will's explanation. So Will had led this too. So at the end of Penelope's section, she dies, and you sort of know that you can pick it up there, but we sort of like elided it at the time because it's another one of those situations where like the actual plot point happens after the event, or like you learn about it later. So on page 438, you find out that this crazy nun might have set fire to the whole building, and that's where she dies. Penelope dies, and he inherits, as her literary executor, all of the sales of her very popular books, which are like these YA books, but closer to Nabokov than the writer can ever get. And then the writer decides, after he's like no longer super successful, that he is going to write one last book. And that one last book is basically The Invented Part, and described as like a book about writing and reading and the creation of literature. And that book does minorly well, and now he's done. He can't write anymore. And that's why he's an insomniac. He has nothing. He put it all into this book, and it was not the success that he wanted it to be. And so it talks about going on writer tours, and just devolves into like making fun of what the situation of reading is at this moment in time and what it means to be a writer. Yeah. That's about all I can sum up. So you can pick where we go next, because this section is my favorite so far, like at this moment, because it was just like hit at the right time, where it was like, yes, I need this sort of adrenaline boost of like fury and humor.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this perfect timely rant about the state of what is being consumed, what is appreciated, the people that are consuming it, the people that are producing it. Like I thought it was just, yeah, it's wonderful. What's your, like, I guess we could just start with it, almost like it kind of like the dipping our toe into the water of it. I almost felt like it started with autofiction, if I'm trying to remember correctly.
Funny that you say that. That's what I was looking at. And I wrote 3 posts that went up this Monday that were like a triptych of things. One was about is promotional. The next one is like one of my crazy ones, and the third one is excerpts from a book about the end of the world. But the crazy one is about that novel that I showed you, the rewriting of Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, a true novel.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it dealt with that and like compared it to this other new Japanese book called Breasts and Eggs, which is very much like an autofiction or I novel. And that quote here is perfect in relation to that, because it's on 429.
Yeah.
That wasn't interesting. The book market wasn't interested in a book about books. It asked for something else. Written life, but not the life of a writer. Literature of the eye, metafiction, based on a true story. That notice that often flashed at the beginning of certain sickening movies starring sick people, always up for an Oscar. Jumping to the first page of the interior book, Night. We see someone open a novel and sigh and smile with satisfaction, and close it again because they'll be too busy living. We used to talk about this at Delkey, that there's very few books. It seemed like for a while there were very few books in which people read books. Like people don't read books in books.
Yeah. And then I like the takeaway of that thought by the end of it. Well, why force yourself to be a writer when it's so much easier to be a character?
It's very true.
Is this a shot across the bow for like Knausgaard and the quote unquote selfie novel?
Oh, I believe so.
Because you see the way like where it ties with this idea of the eye, making yourself a character in the book, And then with autofiction, and then it goes in with like the Scandinavian stuff right after this with the thrillers, and so you put the two close together, it's tough not to make that leap.
Yeah,
if it is a leap, but yeah.
And it is great because like this is if taking what Will said again and like what we know about his previous books and various other things, that this trilogy is sort of a reworking of his earlier materials in a new form with the writer as like how the writer created these, but it's sort of like mocking that the autofictional novel at the same time that if this were all true, it would kind of be an autofictional novel if the writer were Rodrigo, but it's not. And he's sort of like there's so much more like complex than that.
Yeah, there is that irony of like, wait, is this autofictional or not? Well, no, it's not. Obviously, I don't believe Rodrigo went to the Hadron Collider and tried to become a particle, or I'm pretty sure.
Pretty sure he never tried to do that.
But there's always that kind of like play between like, oh, this has happened in my own life in a way, and I'll fictionalize it here, but I'm not a character in this.
It would be autofiction if the literature could write itself.
Exactly. Yeah.
The book is the autofiction of book. Yeah. I guess that's how it came to be.
But I like that idea of autofiction, and it's a literary version of like a selfie, right? Yeah. Where you're putting yourself in the picture as you're taking the picture. Like, well, like be one or the other, right? Like, yeah. So yeah, and then the idea of it mentions selfies and that sort of thing in here as well. So like yeah, I think there's a lot of fun things going on in this section for sure.
I do know that there's a selfie that comes up in the remembered part in volume 3. The writer's like one and only selfie.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
And keep building. I love this line too. So IKEA, who's going to be his nemesis, his arch nemesis, IKEA would never be a writer's writer because he was a reader's writer. He fascinated and seduced his followers and made them feel intelligent and refined and sensitive and like such readers, which is kind of what we were saying last week about like middle mind NPR stuff.
Yeah. Well, that also kind of goes back to that, that wonderful argument of like, is the writer supposed to be the friend of the reader, or is the writer there for the right? You know what I mean? It's the old Mr. Difficult essay question. Or you can go back before that with like John Gardner.
Yeah.
Right. And was it Gas?
Yeah.
Yeah. That argument, like, is it from a publisher's perspective? I would assume most publishers are probably thinking you need to have the reader in mind, right? Yeah.
Well, you need to have sales in mind.
Sales, yeah.
And they don't even equate sales with reader per se, because like, or the style, because there is like the idea that on a base level, the publisher would want the author paying attention to the reader and developing a readership. But if the author is able to have a following by doing something else, that's more important. So like the sales can trump the readership even, in a way. And that's where it's very craven and gross. But like, yeah, I don't like that at all. I'd much rather like these books that are like written.
Yeah.
Like that you have to read.
I remember when for my MFA, when I had to defend my thesis, one of the questions was, who is your readership and your target audience? Oof. Which is like, I thought was like the most bizarre question, right? Because if you honestly want to be publishing, and being in the world of publishing, you need to be considering those sort of things, because if you're not marketable, if you're not this, if you're not that, it's like coming out of this like sausage factory of how to become a writer or whatever that was that I went through. That was like the weirdest way to end it, right? Thinking about, all right, now how do you package this and sell it? And so all this stuff, I just couldn't help but smile while reading it.
It is absolutely perfect, and it is really that sort of mindset that comes up that influences all of IKEA's ideas and writings, and like the writer's just outsider approach to that. Which I love the bit here where it talks about being an outsider, and like the outsider that keeps getting further and further away because he was adjacent to what his contemporaries did, who were like the center. I feel like sometimes that hit a little close to home with like Open Letter and like all the things that we do. Like we're outside. Like if other people are doing a similar bit to this or similar sort of podcast, it would be totally different. It would be something with probably like much less like jagged and random and fun, but it would be, you know, condensed, and tons of people would eat it up. They'd be like, oh my God, it's an online book club. This is great. But we're like on the outside of these. We do things that are like a little bit not reader friendly.
Yeah, I think the goal is to have not a single teachable clip in the entire. If we've done that, I think we've done a good job. Like, I don't want anybody to be able to use this in any sort of lesson plan whatsoever had they chose to teach this book. Like, we're not going to talk about narrative structure. We're not talking about arcs. We're not talking about voices. We're not talking about symbolism. Fuck that.
Although we do talk about the structure a lot. And if anything, isn't this kind of the Freytag's triangle climax? It is
sure.
Because he is done with writing or whatever, and like it's hit the point. This is the ultimate conflict of like him not being able to write, why he can't write, why he can't fit in, why he can't be popular. That's all right here.
I'm thinking more of like, as far as shapes, like True Detective season 1, when Rust is like time is a flat circle that he's cutting his beer can open. This is kind of more of that sort of shape.
Very true.
Where you just have a big hug mug and you just smoke them down to the filters. And don't worry about time. Same as it ever was. Same as it ever was.
Oh my God, yes, right on. Yeah, no, I don't have a good idea of like the first one is sort of like an infinity loop. The other one is a bunch of loops. This one has like another sort of structure to the third part that I think we'll get more of at the very end. There's like one more big revelation coming.
Okay. Well, that's exciting. 1.5
maybe. But yeah, so I think that might be where we can really center in on like that part. But yeah, we don't want to talk about themes. We don't want to be in high school.
Sure. So as far as open letter is concerned, do you think that you guys search out for books that are by authors that are trying to put out work that are writers more so than readers? Readers writer.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, there's stuff all over the place, and there's a continuum, obviously, but like we do tend towards the books that are artistic and are trying something stylistically and structurally. And I don't think that a writer's book is really doing that. Like, people can claim otherwise, and that's fine. I'm sure that there are exceptions that prove the rule. But for the most part, a lot of those books, and I've been trying to read more like just regular stuff. Actually, let me segue on that for a second, because this is an interesting point that came up yesterday, and it came up in part in relation to Rodrigo. He was talking to me about Stephen Wright. Have you read Stephen Wright before? Like M31, Going Native? Okay. So,
no, I want to though.
Yeah. So he's sort of like,
like freaky sci-fi is like perfect for the times right now.
Yeah. And he's sort of like pinching, like he's one of that class of people, but he was like the other one that never got that sort of attention of like those writers, but he's in that same field. He's a laner sort of person. He's in that same grouping, right? Very funny, wild, experimental in like structure and form, whatever. But he never got that thing. So I've been reading Franco Moretti's Signs Taken for Wonders, and he makes a point in there that like right away, like he's my favorite literary critic, because he just takes a shit on like all of normal academic writing, like from the get-go, and I love it. Where he's like, the idea of like literary history or like writing about literature tends to be where you think that some book from the past has some exquisite meaning for you in the present that only can be deciphered by your exegesis, and that thing was hidden in there from the past that applies to the present, and you've uncovered it. He's like, that's fucking nonsense, basically, and a weird way to think about books. But then he talks about how the teachers only teach things that they say are like disruptive of the conventions. So like the Turn of the Screw disrupted the conventions of like ghost novels or whatever, or like these things like were the changing point. He's like, that's weird that you only teach the things that you like the most. Like if you were like a doctor and you only taught the one surgery you were good at, you would be a failure as like a teacher, because people wouldn't know anything else. He's like, you should read the things adjacent to the thing so that you know what the convention was, because maybe that was the convention, but for whatever reason in structural forms, the other book that was just as good didn't get that kind of play, but it had the same things. Like maybe these conventions that you think that are being broken weren't like that. We don't read the adjacent, but we don't read the other than books. We only read the main books, the primary text, especially in universities. And so I'm sort of fascinated by that, and fascinated by the idea of like our books are sort of adjacent to things in a lot of cases. We have a lot of centralized, very famous authors like Dubravka, Rodrigo, or various other people, Marguerite Duras, but in a lot of senses, they are like, there's Bolaño, and you do Frazan or whatever. Like there's like that sort of setup, and I kind of like living on that surrounding part where you're not like the peak of like everyone looks to yours as your book or your author as like the one representative of something, but that we are part of the landscape of the very interesting that are on the peripheries of things.
Sure. And who gets to pick who's the like? Who gets to pick the zenith or the figurehead or the you know what I mean? Lit Hub, sure. Is it through like a major review? Like if
I think part of it is sales and part of it is academia. Maybe in hand. I was in a meeting once where we were talking about it was a university meeting, and it was talking about Mark Danielewski and his books and like things that he had said about how he really writes for like his fans and to have like his fans love his books or whatever, and their way into him. They're complicated. You have to really like invest to like get into his world. A lot of people have done that with the more recent books in particular. And there was a moment where I think not, where an academic said, we don't want people deciding what books are good. Academics are the ones who decide which books are good. And like their whole basis on close reading, which Franco Moretti has distant reading. He believes close reading is dumb. It's all like plays to that. Like he's down the middle of the plate for me as like a sort of contrarian and also like questioning like the given structures, the conventional structures.
Yeah, I forget where it is in here, but there's that really funny I love the parts where the writer is talking with IKEA, and the voice of IKEA is just fantastic. Here's what you got to do, man. You gotta, But I think there was one where he said he ends up saying something like blah 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 blah, Chekhov, blah 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 blah, and then just like name the Borges, blah blah blah.
Yeah, that's great.
And blah 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 me.
Oh my god! I just flipped open to the part that has a bit that's almost the same as the Moretti thing. It was a comfortable write and possibly the only teaching role where doing it poorly had no grave consequence, as could happen with instructors of airplane pilots or heart surgeons, for example. It didn't even diminish anyone's chances of success because one could write really badly and still earn a lot of money and get really famous. Which
I underline that part.
How that feels.
Well, no, I Wednesday night is when I teach my creative writing workshop, and I have this like dread, like it's so hard teaching a creative writing workshop because like the participants are like clamoring for like a rule or tell me this is good, tell me this is bad, and I just kind of want to like, I don't know, do you like what you wrote? Cool, like fix it a little bit, you're good to go. Like there's this weird idea of like, how do you like, it's so weird workshopping a piece, I think. And that part really made me, this idea of like, as a workshop teacher, like, I don't know. I don't even know how to write myself. What are you talking about?
At least it's like low stakes. It's not like anyone's going to die. In fact, they'll probably be better off. They'll be better off.
So your story really sucks. If you probably leave it just like that, you got a better chance of publishing it than if I do something with it. Trust me. Because I have no clue how to make something like good and publishable. So yeah. I found that quote. It's on 440 in the middle. And this is how IKEA talked. I, blah, blah, Chekhov, blah, 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 Flaubert, blah, blah, Gabo, never Garcia Marquez, blah, 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 Kafka, blah, 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 Borges, blah, Cervantes, blah, me.
I love it. I love it. It's so good.
He even spouted off an I, blah, 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 the sister of this man I have sitting next to me.
One idea I had in relation to this too is like, I could read a statement that he makes, that the writer makes in here, or a comment, and see if you agree with it or disagree with it. To what level? Because as much as it's sort of like, the writer is sort of like overblown in this case and is like, like really going for it with the rant and with like the comedy of it and like the bit and knowing it's a bit. There's a lot of stuff in here that I'm like, man, this is absolutely spot on. Like this one.
Well, before you do that though, because like there's the tongue-in-cheek aspect of it. Like, so the author of this book, the real Rodrigo, is writing a trilogy of sorts, a triptych, whatever you want to call it. And then he's written IKEA, this character that has their own triptych with the gifts. Gifts. What were the three?
Received. I had that circle because I was like, this is so perfect.
I think the first one was gifts
returns and gifts lost.
So there's clearly something like, you know, self-deprecating humor, and it's all in good fun here.
Yeah, and that's really good fun. Although this one, I would state this. I would tell all of your students this one and be like, this is a real. I believe in this 100%. The new young writers were at that time like creationists. For them, the history of literature began just 5 or at most 10 years before their own appearance on the scene. And I run into that constantly. Like where young writers have never read anything that's older than like their immediate generation. Or if they have, it's only like Great Gatsby or like Song of Solomon or like things that are like already canonized on that level, but they're like very like don't know a lot. They haven't read a lot. And they've read like just a handful of things and they believe that everything started like about 10 years ago.
I could believe that. I mean, it's the same for the most part. It's the same thing with music, with cinema, with, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones.
I could agree with that. I mean, and of course, like if you're studying English or something like that, you have to go through the canon of, you know, going back to like Beowulf or something. But yeah, for the most part,
Segue. So one of the most famous author photographers of our time is Beowulf Sheehan. I know, who's an amazing guy, like really, really good guy. And if anyone, I'm sure anyone listening to this has seen author photos that he's taken because they're like everywhere. It's every big author is his person, and he's like does a lot of stuff for like Penn World Voices and various festivals. He takes a lot of photos. He had a book come out last year of his author photos, and I wonder if this isn't like an upside down joke about him on page 478, where it talks about the popular writer photographer famous for submitting his subjects to implausible and arbitrary proses like that's not what Beowulf does at all, but the first thing that came to mind was Beowulf when I read that, and being like yeah, that's awesome, because like Beowulf would have been taking all the photos when Rodrigo was at Penn World Voices and festival and stuff like that. He would be the one that that.
Let me jump off for 20 seconds. I have to do something for my daughter really fast.
No problem. I'll read some of the last that I really like. If you do that, the one that I was looking for that I was saying like reminded me of Open Letter. I just put Open Letter is on 479, and with that they were done with him. That's all, folks. Adieu. And again, where was he? Where had he ended up? Of one thing he was more or less certain: light years away from what his contemporaries were doing. Not in front and not behind, but far off to one side. And that was the part where I was like, oh, that hits a little close to home. That one definitely. Oh, he did inspire. I have one other random thing. He did inspire the next, every 2 weeks I'm trying to write like bigger, more fun posts. And there's a whole that I had planned that I was thinking about from based on one of my students' papers for the next one. And then his line on 485 nailed it for me, where it says, it's talking about how people no longer read books because they have TV shows, and TV shows have not only just replaced books, but they're like trying to be more than that. So if at one time television had been accused of being the great enemy of reading, now it went even further and erected itself as a superior substitute to reading. Seeing is better than reading. And I have this is going to fit into a scheme 2 weeks from now about ranking media during the quarantine and what the best media is.
Clearly, it's the a docu-series.
I'm going to say dreams. Dreams are the greatest media that we have right now. This is
I had a weird dream this morning, so I had to finish some reading to be prepared. Hold on one second.
This is the fun of quarantine times. I do have to point out, this is just for Anthony's benefit, that the word bloom appears in this section. Tumors bloom inside him like flowers.
The one that. Dreams. Yeah, sorry. So I woke up, took my wife to work at like 5 this morning, and I came back and I was like, I'll do all my reading. I'll just stay awake and do the reading. And I promptly fell asleep on the couch. Of course, I'm not going to be awake.
Yeah.
But in my dream, I dreamed I was reading this book. So I dreamed I was reading the dream part, and then it made like perfectly clear sense, everything I was reading. I don't remember what it was. And I had like all these wonderful things to say about it. But then it ended up in my dream when I finished reading it. I was at Rodrigo's house. And then I accidentally, in trying to explain in exuberance the things he was doing and how wonderful they were, I knocked one of his paintings off of the wall, and it landed in this like little moat he had outside of his house. The painting was, I don't know how it went from inside the house to outside, and it got soaking wet, and he was in the other room making us some coffee or something. And so I put the painting back up on the wall, and it was wet, and the paint started falling off of it. And so it turned into like this Mr. Bean thing where I'm trying to hide the fact that I've ruined something that he had, all the while trying to discuss something, you know, where you like cover it very quickly as he walks by. As you were saying in that one, like, and that was my dream. I think it totally means that I'm a fraud and I'm stupid. I don't know anything, and I'm just in here trying to like show the fact that I've ruined a painting and I don't want anybody to see it. Like clearly that's what that means. Since we talk about Freud in this one and the psychoanalysis.
The book on hating Freud. Oh my God.
Yeah, but it went from reading Rodrigo to Mr. Bean shenanigans very quickly.
This one, here's another statement for if you agree with it or not. I have this come up constantly, and I have no clear response to it aside from trying to like, I don't know. I just have no good response to it. So
let's keep these. I want to keep these clear. The first one was most people like to read stuff that's within 10 years of their
new writers, young writers seem to exist as if like literature started 10 years ago at most, like when they appeared as a writer, and they'll go back.
Yeah. No, I think that seems fair for like a generalization.
Yeah.
Like I know for me, it's like postmodernism, dirty realism, that kind of stuff is huge for my generation just before me. So that would make sense.
How many people read like Stanley Elkin or Henry Green or Muriel Spark?
Dude, that Magic Kingdom is so stinking good.
That is a writer's writer.
Thank you for putting me on that book. That is a killer book.
So,
what's the other one? And the other one, Mulligan.
Mulligan Stew.
Mulligan Stew. Best cover ever, by the way. It's brought to you by Microsoft 96 clip art. It is the coolest cover. Love it. And that book is nuts. All the beginning letters. Oh, so good. Okay, sorry.
Oh, that book is golden. Yeah, people need to go back to that. Okay, here's the next one. 470. His students were badly written wolves and bad readers. And when one of them would howl that classic of literary criticism / online comment in virtual bookstores, quote, I didn't identify with any of the characters, or quote, none of the main characters seemed real to me. He half closed his eyes and responded that, quote, they seem implausible to you, but nevertheless, they're written, ergo they exist. As far as identifying with them, let's see if I can find some book about someone who goes to a writing workshop because they have nothing better to do with their life. I get to like, I couldn't identify or I couldn't relate to this character. That this book isn't very good because I couldn't relate to the main character. I get that ad nauseum teaching.
And there's another word they love you, connect. Right? But yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that too.
Oh my God. This part is so good. It is so good. Still on fire. I found the part where he described the book that he writes. So after he like writes his last book, he found a way to write another book, the one that had been his last book. The book was then something far more revolting than the subject of his first book. An uncomfortable there's like a fire engine going off. A subject, the only one he had left, that had become the most unsettling and transgressive of all. A subject that was, yes, delicate. The book was about reading and writing, about the increasingly dreadful and depraved modalities of reading and writing. There was one other thing. So like that I thought this is interesting. This is the other thing I thought was really interesting about the idea of what his books are like and about one set of what like the IKEA literature versus phrase-on literature, if we want to put it that way. So there's a secret. He says that he never forget, or who says this though? James, I think. Henry James does. He'd also recommend when it came to structuring fictions of any kind of real sustenance to never forget that all of life was, quote, inclusion and confusion, while the secret of art ran through discrimination and selection, and to leave something untold or unrevealed. And then he goes on, and then the writer's like, and he'd done just the opposite. He'd revealed everything. He bothered and concluded and confused the ghost, the ghost to whom he belonged, only to discover too late that he believed in them, but they didn't believe in him, that his ghost discriminated against and didn't choose him, that they weren't even interested enough to appear and give him a slight and half-hearted fright. Which I love like that difference between the like paring things down, getting rid of things, and the like maximalism of this trilogy. Triptych.
Yeah. So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Page 461, there's this little part where he says, he'd come to Geneva clinging to a well-worn but never waded into Beyond Its Shores copy of Ada or Ardor by Vladimir Nabokov. He tried in vain so many times to read it, but mysteriously, he never managed to get past its first pages. Though Ada was, without a doubt, along with Absalom by William Faulkner and Hopscotch by Julio Cortázar, the novel he'd started the most times but never continued or finished. What is the title for you that you start, like, is there a book you've started but haven't finished, or tried and haven't fit, and maybe a couple times?
Ada, I've tried twice. I'm going to read that. That one is one that I like. I read like 120 pages of it one summer, like a decade ago, and like literally a decade ago, and set it aside and never picked it up again. And I went and started it over like on a winter break and was like, no, can't do this now. And but I really want to have read that book for any number of reasons. So that's one that I have never been able to finish. I don't know what ones I haven't started, but there's ones that are like big books that sit next to me, like Jose Donoso's The Obscene Bird of Night. I've wanted to read that book for 20 years, and I've never opened it. So it's sort of like that for me, but not exactly. It's like I carry it around. I always have it on my top of my to read list. I never get started on it. How about you?
Ulysses.
Oh shit! I love it.
And it's funny because it gets brought up. I wrote down in the as I was reading, I wrote down in the margin Ulysses, and then I came to it. It mentions Ulysses in here, like not that much. A few pages later, it's like, oh crap. Thought that was funny. But yeah, that's one I've started reading a few times, and I want to read it so bad. I even have like supplementary materials that talk about Ulysses, so I can read that with it as I'm going through it to appreciate it more. But I know it's one that you love, so I thought I would bring up one that you love so much. You like Hopscotch is one that you like a lot as well, right?
Yeah, but I only read that. I read that once in, to date myself, 1998.
Okay, I wasn't even born yet.
1997. It was like when I graduated from college, I read 2 books in succession, and they were Gravity's Rainbow and Hopscotch, and I loved both of them. And I've reread Gravity's Rainbow at least once, probably twice since then. Although that was also 15 years ago. And Hopscotch I brought with me to Argentina when I went to Buenos Aires and started reading it again there, but didn't get very far and then put it aside. And it's been floating around too as a book that I want to go back and reread and see if I still like it as much. Because I also want to read that in combination with 62, a model kit, which came after and relates to it in a way, because I always wanted to get a tattoo that was just you.
Book related tattoos. That was a question
tattoos that are like obscure. That one would be way more obscure than the posthorn.
I have a bit for when we finish books. Thank you for reminding me of that. I totally forgot about this idea. Maybe I had this morning with my dream. Oh, that's why. It's so weird. Everybody should wake up at like 4:30 or 5, read one page, and then fall back asleep. You'll have fantastic dreams.
Okay.
I had this idea of a way of doing a book review. When we finish the book, I know we like to do the writing the like insert, paint by numbers, back jacket copy, which we'll do that. But the other one was, if you were going to get a literary themed tattoo based off of this book, what would the tattoo look like?
Mr. Tripp.
Okay, you're doing the Mr. Tripp one. Like I was thinking, like if I was going to do one like the last book we did, Ducks Newburyport. There was the one bookseller that was going to get a Ducks Newburyport tattoo. So I was thinking about what would the tattoo look like. Mine would be a cartoon raccoon banging a yogurt cup on the like all crazy on the ground. Like that'd be a cool tattoo, right?
Yeah. We were going to when I was not seriously, but trying to convince Sarah Mesa and Katie Whittemore when we were on our tour that we're supposed to be on right now, that we would all get 4x4 tattooed across our knuckles. Because it would fit perfectly.
Hell yeah.
That would be baller.
So I don't know what I would do right now, but I'm thinking with this one so far, the idea would be a little tiny moon with like a hose that's going through it attached to an astronaut, which is bigger in the forefront. And then the astronaut has his helmet off and like his eyes are starting to bulge out. That would be my idea right now. I don't know if that's going to be the final book review tattoo for the dream part, but the moon base with the helmetless astronaut is a great, right now is how I feel reading this.
Yep, love it.
All right, I just got a text. I have to pick up my wife from work.
Okay, let's see. Do you have a favorite line that you want to say?
I did. I just closed the book. 1 second. You have yours?
No, I thought I did, but I think oh man, there's so much good shit in here, man. All this stuff about like about the phones and whatnot is so great.
Oh, like a minute of your life for every text.
Yeah,
that made me think. There was a model of a phone that was my favorite. It was the LG. I forget what it was, but it could only receive phone calls, and then it flips, and you can text on it, and that's about it. It was a perfect phone.
this is one I think I shared back in the day. This is my favorite for here, but I remember sharing this online when I was reading this the first time. But seriously, I mean it. Believe me, nobody is interested in that photo of what you're eating or that sunset you're seeing or your most recent deep thought you just have to share with all of humanity, unless you're interested in their reflections, their sunsets, and their meals too. Isn't it true that not that long ago you liked many fewer things and that you took your time to think about whether something was or wasn't worthy of a like? Isn't it true that you used to make more sense to go to the bathroom to read than to write? that I'm totally for it. When you can't remember, it's like down below. Isn't it true that you kind of miss that delectable torture of not being able to remember something, a name, a title, a song, and instead of finding it and terminating that torture immediately via Google, allowing that forgotten thing to live and expand, and while you try to overcome it, to awaken other memories and other songs and titles and names? I love that. I try my best not to try and look up things when I'm trying to remember what they are. Like I want to, especially in like arguments and like bars, bars like that exist. But like if you're like that movie came out in like 2004 and someone's like, no, it was like 2009, and you can like, don't look it up. It's way more fun if you don't look it up.
Yeah, argue it out. Like, what was Christopher Walken's first film? You know, I could argue that one.
What was Babe Ruth's batting average? Yeah. Invented. There was no Babe Ruth.
I'll just for the fun of you, I thought there's two types of liars: writers and publishers.
That was in my head too.
Writers emit lies while publishers omit truth. Or I think that's paraphrasing it, but I really enjoyed that one.
I have that one marked. If there's anything else I want to say I've read a bunch of them that are my favorites.
But anybody that listens to this, if you ever see Rodrigo, you should take a selfie with him and then ask him where he gets his ideas from while you're taking this selfie.
Actually, what we should do next week when he's on here is ask him about Hugh Grant.
I was going to bring that up, whether or not he's allowed to talk about that story or not.
I don't know. So
Hugh Grant is mentioned in this, and Rodrigo, I believe, has met him.
Rodrigo has definitely met him. Oh man! Yeah, here's your line. But of course, there are two kinds of liars: writers and publishers. The former omit lies; the latter omit truth. That was the one I marked too. Another one that I'll reason was great. That's why people preferred to read immediate and quick things that didn't slow you down too much, and moving on to the next thing. Text messages, Twitter, which is what I feel is also a truth among things. People just want to keep moving fast. Maybe not anymore. Yeah. Maybe the quarantine broke this.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Anyways, you can check us out online at open_letter on wherever we are. I don't know. Rate us, review us on iTunes. We might be asking you soon to become a Patreon supporter. That is still in the works, but these podcasts might need to be subsidized in some way. So we are maybe going to put that together for you in the near future. We'll talk about it before the next season. But Brian, where can they get Joytime Killbox?
Anywhere you buy books, it's available. So yeah, order it from your favorite local bookstore, or you can get it directly from the publisher. If you have to do Amazon, it's there too. But do it small. Better booksellers, please.
Yeah, get it, buy it. we'll be back next week with Rodrigo live for the last episode of the season, where we'll finish out the dream part, the second trip part of the triptych. So till then, let's go hunt some books.
Worst ending ever.